Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Freddy and today I am going to do a single book review on one of the books that I finished reading in June, and that is this, The Sum of Our Follies by Shih-Li Kow. If you see there's something a little bit different this time, you may notice that the shirt that I'm wearing here actually bears the name of my channel. This was actually a birthday gift given by my sister back in March. For me, it seems to me that my family is a bit more excited about me making this channel than I am. And I know that my parents have been quite supportive of it, my sister as well, and she gave me this shirt, a custom-made shirt bearing the name of my channel for my birthday. And at the time my channel still had like I don't know, 16 17 subscribers, so I thought I wasn't really on that momentum yet. But now that I actually have reached my first 100 subscribers, and I'm not sure if it's gonna go down to below 100 in the future because somebody would unsubscribe and all that, but I already reached my first 100, and I thought that maybe I just could do something a little bit different. Maybe it's time for me to wear this shirt in front of this video. Finally, I wear this birthday gift for a video, and I think my sister will probably be happy about that. So that's a bit of sidetracking, and now back to this video. This year I've actually been wanting to read more books by Malaysian authors, and I actually started that little project of mine sometime in May. The first book the first Malaysian book that I started reading was actually Faisal Terani's The Professor, and I thought that maybe that book would be the first book I feature in my book talk videos. But then I find that that book didn't exactly wasn't really something that impressed me, so I DNF'd it. However, the next book that I read was actually this book, and it's really great, and I enjoyed it very much. So this video would kind of mark the first the so-called Malaysian book talks that I'm gonna have this year. Hopefully I'm gonna find more wonderful Malaysian books, and I'll keep sharing with all of you guys out there. So I've never read anything by Shih-Li Kow before, so this is my first work of hers. I know that she has another book which was published before this, but it was a short story collection. It was not a novel. It's called Ripples, and I might pick that up sometime because it seems like that book was quite acclaimed as well. It won awards, and after reading this book, I'm sure that that book would probably have good writing as well as this one also, and I'm looking forward to that. So a little bit about The Sum of Our Follies. This book was published in 2014, but I don't think that this book really reached a certain kind of fame associated with it, because I didn't know much about this book before that. I didn't know anything about the author, and the only reason I knew about this book because it was actually featured in various articles online about the list of Malaysian books that everyone should read, and it just got me interested in it. And it seems like the title itself is also quite interesting. I seem to have this inclination towards titles that are a bit vague, but at the same time a bit dramatic. So that's certainly an attraction factor for me. And the title of this novel definitely is something that was vague, because I don't exactly know what this novel is going to be about just by reading the title. The Sum of Our Follies tells the story of the life in a small fictional Malaysian town. It's a town situated in an actual state called Perak in Malaysia. The town's name is called Lubok Sayong, and this novel does not actually have a very obvious plot to it. Um, if you are the kind of person who really likes to read novel with a really strong sense of plot, then this novel would probably not something that is suitable for your taste. At the same time, this novel is also not incredibly character driven. Uh, we always talk about like how books tend to be like plot driven or character driven. I must say that the Sum of Our Follies is not something that you can simply put in either two of those categories. I think there is also like another book, like another kind of book, in which it does not focus on the characters or the plot, but instead it focuses on the zeitgeist of the setting. And this book is one of those kind of books, because the focus of this book is actually the setting, the small town. The changes that we see in this book does not really involve much character or the plot, but instead we see the changes happening to the town itself. And the way that we see changes in the town is through the lens of the characters involved. This book has two narrators. One of the narrator is named Aoyong, and he is one of the main characters in this book. He is someone who has been living in Lubok Sayong for quite a while. Prior to that, he has been living in a big city outside of Lubok Sayong. So, in a sense, that you get a point of view of someone who is both an insider or and the outsider of this particular town. So I think that is quite interesting to see. Ao Yong does not exactly have a family there living in Lubok Sayong. He is the owner of a lychee canning factory, which is interesting, but it doesn't really form a very major plot element to this novel. What he essentially does in this novel is just that he kind of acts like a guide to the readers, bringing this sense of community and the atmosphere, a little bit of a claustrophobic atmosphere that one could associate with a small town, but at the same time this sense of close-knit community. And he lets us see this kind of relationship that is happening between its inhabitants, and the way that this atmosphere is influencing the lives of people in this small town. I find it really interesting that we have a narrator who is partially an insider and also partially an outsider, because we, the readers, are actually the outsider of this town, and so we don't really get to associate much of our experiences directly with this town. So it's really good that we have someone who knows this town inside out, but at the same time we can relate to this character because he's also an outsider, and in that way we can connect with him as well. So it's like we are able to connect with this book in both ways, both in terms of how the town is from the inside and from the point of view of someone who was once outside. The next character from whose lens we look at this book is a woman called Bivi, and she is an inhabitant who has been living in this town for almost all her life. She owns a guest house in the town, which is called the Big House because it's literally a big house. And this big house is actually a house that belonged to her family. And it has a history to it, which is really interesting and relates to the town itself. Basically, Bivi's father was a polygamist, and so Bivi not only has her own mother, she also had 3 other stepmothers, and because of that, she had like many half siblings in this book. And that part of her, that story of her, is something that is explored repeatedly in this book, which I think is really interesting as well, because it mentions how her family, how her stepmothers actually came from different racial backgrounds. So we see that Bivi's family uh, the whole family kind of represents this multicultural community, a multicultural family, who at the same time are actually experiencing some sort of tense relationship with each other because they are not really close. There's this interesting view on how a family can be quite multicultural. BV certainly has this really unconventional family. And so the third character we are introduced to in this book is a young girl called Mary Ann. So Mary Ann was an orphan. She was from an orphanage in Kuala Lumpur, and one day a pair of couple came to adopt her. And who would have thought one of half of the couple, the woman, was actually BV's half sister. And this couple decided to adopt Mary Ann and bring her home. While they were driving home, they met with an accident, and this couple passed away, and Mary Ann was a survivor. Because of that, instead of living with BV's half sister, Mary Ann ended up living with BV in the big house in Lubok Sayong. And you also see the events unfolding around her, events involving stuff in the small town, also through the eyes of Mary Ann, who is a complete outsider like us. So it is from the eyes of these three characters that we start to explore more about this small town called Lubok Sayong. This book, the magic is not exactly through how the characters change. One of my favorite things in books is to see how characters learn about things and how they develop over time. There are a little bit of that elements in this book involving the characters that I already mentioned earlier, Aoyong, BV, and Mary Ann, but at the same time, it's not the main focus of this book. The characters aren't the ones that are taking the center stage in this book, but instead this book just pretty much shows what are the things those random things that occur in a small town. And so just to give you an idea about the kinds of things that happen in the small town, let me just kind of give you a quick list on some of the major stuff that happens in this town. So we have stuff like floods, we have stuff like a brief tourism boom happening to the town, visit of a political figure, bug infestation, tourists being eaten by a fish, exorcism, sexual harassment in a workplace, conversion therapy camp, and subsequently an LGBT revolution. And these are just some of the stuff that I could remember. And you may think that these all things are, things that are really disconnected, really random. And it's true, those things are in fact really disconnected. They are not really events that are very much interrelated with each other. And I just enjoyed seeing all of this because it really, from the point of view of someone who is Malaysian, it really feels familiar to me. All of these things are things that have been a little bit of the flavor of things that could happen in Malaysia. And these are the events that you could consider as something that is totally plausible in the context of what it feels to be living in Malaysia. So, as a person who lives in Malaysia, I think that all of these things and the way the characters react on all of these events are the way that a real life Malaysian could react. It could totally be something that happens in real life in Malaysia, or happening in through rumors, because I won't say that exorcism is something that is really common, like really concrete thing that happens in Malaysia, but you certainly hear a lot of stories about exorcism, and I don't know, to a certain extent, people getting eaten by fish. These events feel really Malaysian, and so I would say that the Sum of Our Follies is a very Malaysian book. If you want to get an idea of how it feels to kind of live in Malaysia with all those different kinds of weird nuances. I won't say that the Sum of Our Follies is like the perfect example of how it feels to live in Malaysia, but it certainly gives you a rough idea on how it feels, you know, the kinds of stuff that you could probably hear in the news or from, you know, through rumors. Anyway, that's all I have for the Sum of Our Follies. I really enjoyed this book. It's certainly something that I would give 5 stars to, and I'm really glad that this is like my so-called first video of my little Read More Malaysian project. And I hope to read more of good Malaysian books in the future this year. So I'll see you in another video, and until then, take care and bye bye.